Video by Emmanuel
Hello,
Isaiah Smith.
good morning. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and today's date is Sunday, November 23rd, 2025. The time is 9:24 a.m., and I am in Kendall, West Florida. The topic of today's lecture is high treason. And before I start this lecture, I would like to address a number of persons, organizations, and entities that are especially involved with my gang stalking campaign here in Miami, Florida. Some of these people I've known over the years. Some of these people I do not know. But all of them use the gang stalking, espionage, and attack function so as to give their lives meaning. And that's sad on their part. The persons and entities that I would like to address are as follows. I would like to address certain persons that I knew from upwards of 25 years ago in Shaker Heights, Ohio. I call you the Shaker Heights boys. I would like to address the Department of Defense. I would like to address these dirtbag undercover operatives that are being utilized against me throughout Miami-Dade County. I would like to address Miami-Dade County thugs. Okay, and mind you, when it comes to gang stalking, thug is a term that I use to describe any number of people that participate in clandestine gang stalking. And that's across the demographic spectrum. It's across the socioeconomic spectrum. Simply put, if you participate in a state-sanctioned signaling mechanism that is designed at disrupting, harming, attacking, spreading germs to, or otherwise hindering a person's progress, as the U.S. Constitution prescribes, you are a thug. I could not care less what your grade point average was in high school or what you've done since then. You're a thug. And I'm going to address useful idiot stalkers in general before we get into this high treason matter. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you know that this morning, as with every morning, I tend to do these lectures outdoors. So I may have to project or raise my voice from time to time to drown out the background noise. So let me address these persons really quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Then we'll get to more important matters. So you guys from Shaker Heights, all right, I have not interacted with you in 25 years. You all somehow found some line of communication with my maternal family to find out what I've been up to and where I live, where I worked, and other bits of information about me through my maternal family. Okay, I already know that's the truth. Okay, you found some line of communication with them that has been a true blessing to you in your malfeasance mission and your activities in clandestine gang stalking. If it wasn't for that line of communication, you all wouldn't have had any access to me at all over the past 25 years. I think it's pitiful on your part that 25 years after I last laid eyes on either of you, on any of you, you see it fit to use these clandestine espionage and attack mechanisms still to this day. That means I have been on your minds for the past 25 years constantly. And you finally saw an opportunity to impose yourselves using a clandestine thuggery and attack module that makes you feel safe. You feel safe doing it because a lot of people do it, first of all, and that gives you a sort of a sense of anonymity or having gone along with the pack. And secondly, it's state sanctioned. Okay? And I'll say this, ladies and gentlemen, there is no depth to the depravity that human beings will go to if they know they won't get caught. You got people that are torture, rape, and murder minor children if they know they could get away with it. You have people that would kill large numbers of people at one time if they know they could get away with it. There are people that will commit the most heinous acts that the human mind could conceive if they know they can get away with it. And that's what clandestine gang stalking, ladies and gentlemen, offers people. It offers you the ability to sink to the depths of human depravity with no consequence. You can disrupt other people's lives. You can attack other people. You can attack other people's families or loved ones. You can orchestrate all kinds of thuggery using this state-sanctioned cabal of criminal activity. And what makes it criminal is that the mobs of people that participate in it are doing nothing but covering for each other as they wreak havoc in society. So, we're going to move along. Department of Defense personnel. All right. It's like this. A favorite talking point of the American establishment to deflect criticism of its military is this. These men and women would get up and die for you to protect their freedoms. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe that at all. Okay? Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. We are not at war right now. We're not fighting anybody. We're not in World War III. World War II is over. The Korean War is over. The Vietnam War is over. The Persian Gulf War is over. The Iraq War is over. The war in Afghanistan is over. So what are we talking about here? Okay. This country has a military. All right. Every country has a military. The militaries of every country have soldiers that are trained to do combat. Okay? You act like these soldiers aren't paid to do what they do. You know, the establishment of this country has sort of this complex that these soldiers are just benevolent persons sitting around in a room drinking hot chocolate and watching Mr. Rogers until somebody makes a terrorist threat of some kind against the homeland. Then they jump up, put on their military outfits, and boom, they're ready for action. These people that join the military have sworn an oath to serve their country in times of peace and war. They're paid well. They get excellent benefits. They get all kinds of combat training. They get to travel the world, courtesy of the taxpayer. They get all kinds of discounts and benefits for college education. They get to handle all kinds of expensive equipment like F-16 fighter jets, big old army tanks, all these naval destroyers that you see in the ocean. They get to train and live in state-of-the-art facilities if they're stationed somewhere else. And they probably have easier access to sexual partners than any other profession on earth. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, the rapes they commit, not only against their fellow female cadets, but against women in other countries, have always been covered up and swept under the rug to unseen and unbelievable levels. Okay? It's something that I have come to the realization of since probably about 2011. I saw a horribly disturbing news article about the number of female cadets in the U.S. Armed Services, the U.S. Department of Defense, that get raped by their male colleagues. Sometimes the guys are raping them 2 or 3 at a time. And these women, these brave women who have decided to join their army, their military, despite their physical deficiencies with respect to, I mean, they're not simply going to be as strong or fast as a male, but they still choose to join the armed services and serve this country with distinction. These women are going through, they're signing up, they're meeting with recruiters, they're going to boot camp, they're completing boot camp, they're suiting up. Some of them have been to war, some haven't, but they're a member of the armed services. They kiss their family goodbye and they're probably stationed in another state or country. They go to perform their duty and get raped by a pack of male cadets. They report it and they're told to shut their mouths. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm of the mindset that this topic, clandestine gang stalking, it's potentially polarizing. I mean, it's unfortunate that it's polarizing. I mean, it's simply a violation of the U.S. Constitution and is a enabler of state-sanctioned crimes against humanity. And ladies and gentlemen, it's unfortunate that a program that exists in that capacity, where the U.S. populace is manipulated in such a way by clandestine third parties who are wards of the state and state-sanctioned actors, so as to go out into society and using organized disruption, annoyance, intimidation, germ spreading, sabotage, and attack methods, disrupt the lives of other sovereign United States citizens. In a perfect world, a place like the United States would have a military that serves its population at home and abroad with some class and some dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, my maternal grandfather served in the World War II effort. My maternal uncle was a master sergeant during the war effort, and we're talking World War II here. Furthermore, I have a cousin who at 19 lost his life in Iraq serving in the 357th Maintenance Company, having come under heavy fire by Al-Qaeda. Him and his entire unit were wiped out. They were decimated. And I myself not long after high school, met with a recruiter in North Randall, Ohio, to talk about Marine opportunities with the U.S. Marines. This was in 2004. I was nearing the age of 19. So I was 18 years old. I met with recruiters. And we ended up parting ways because I wanted to fight in Iraq. And the recruiter wanted me to take an office job in Australia, which, I mean, the typical American male, if they had the opportunity to either fight in Iraq in the heat of a war or take an office job in Australia, most guys in this country would say, well, just go ahead and send me on over to Australia and give me that office job. That sounds nice. I hear they have nice beaches there. I'll probably take a beautiful Aboriginal Australian girlfriend. I'll wear my uniform everywhere so that people will respect me. I'll go over there and we'll probably vacation in a tiki resort not long after I'm sent there. And we'll sit there and drink tequilas, and well, we'll go to wonderful concerts and enjoy ourselves. We'll hang out at beach resorts in our spare time. And maybe we'll get married one day and live in a beautiful home, raise a family. We'll have a beautiful life right there in beautiful and sunny Australia. That life was offered to me and I rejected it. I wanted to fight in Iraq. And I don't know what documentation is on my file, if my file is still kept by the United States Marine Corps. I imagine the files are forever. They are digitally kept. I'm not sure what what's documented and what's not documented, but that was the scenario. That was the only reason I wanted to join. That was my passion. Okay, I wanted to do combat. And the reason I wanted to do combat was because some of us, okay, when I say some of us, I mean living, breathing, thinking Homo sapiens that are of the human genus. Sometimes we just need that action to make sense of the world around us. And that's what I wanted to do. And the recruiter, he just told me plainly. He said, listen, the battle is too hot. It's too dangerous. I'm not sending you to Iraq. And to his disappointment, I thanked him for his service. Because, I mean, he did everything that he was probably told to do by his superiors. with respect to swaying me from that idea. Okay, it was probably his superiors that told him to sort of talk me away from doing combat. So he was doing his duty. And he made a suggestion based on a number of factors. And I discontinued the talks and went about my life. Although I remembered later that year having seen on Fox News a news story where it showed that the Marines had cleared out Fallujah from top to bottom. And Fallujah was considered one of the most dangerous cities in Iraq at that time. And I remember feeling proud of the Marines for having cleared out Fallujah the way they did. I mean, it started off as a hotbed for terroristic activity, and when they finished with it, I mean, it was essentially a ghost town. They cleared the entire thing. Cleared the entire thing out. And I remember feeling proud of them. Even though I didn't join, just having experienced what I did at the recruitment phase gave me a sense of pride seeing them do that. Even though I wasn't a part of it, I was proud of them for doing that. And to this day, I think that military operation of essentially liberating Fallujah is one of the most historically significant achievements in the history of the U.S. Marine Corps. Okay? That was a monumental accomplishment on their part. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not to say that I don't have respect for my military. It's this, okay? I have a complex and multifaceted view of the military, particularly as a targeted individual. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I were not a targeted individual, I, your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, would tell you that I'm not a targeted individual. But as it were, the opposite is true. And I experience gang stalking day in and day out on a daily basis in heightened levels for the past 10 years, but in varied levels over the past 30. And I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. At first, when I didn't know how to quantify what was happening to and around me, all right, I just went with the flow. Rolled with the punches, as they say. But after I got to doing my research and I found out that what I was experiencing had a name, a face, and a price tag, okay, a modus operandi, etc., I knew I had to speak out against it because it's disruptive. It's difficult to carry about your life, your existence, your trajectory with a sense of focus and purpose while a targeted individual. And what my stalkers are doing now, obviously at the behest of the liaisons and those above the liaisons, is they're trying to make it look as if the targeted campaign that I'm in now is not it's not dangerous. It's not this. It's not that. It's not everything he's made it out to be. It's just a few instances of pestering here and there and here, at various intervals throughout the day. Nothing more than anybody experiences. in a heavily populated city or a city that's not that populated. And it's funny, ladies and gentlemen, I started this lecture at about 9:25 this morning. And within the first 5 minutes of the lecture, stalkers started sending signals left and right that I was recording. And these signals were very loud so that it would wake up people in their homes and apartments. These signals were loud because they want stalkers to be out right now while I'm doing this. Why? So they can try and disrupt the lecture, but that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, I speak harshly about our country and all of its auxiliaries, including the United States military, because I have personally experienced militaristic operations in my gang stalking campaign, and I know that there are military elements involved. Now, I don't know if the military is involved in this, particularly the Department of Defense and its various auxiliaries. I don't know if they're investigating me or if they're investigating my stalkers. Maybe they're investigating all of us. But I encounter regularly various stalkers that are sent to my location as a result of federal intervention. And there is right now, as we speak, federal intervention in my gang stalking campaign. Okay? And I see that as a good thing. I see it as a good thing because federal intervention means that my work has hit in the right ears. And that any initial investigation that has been utilized with respect to my gang stalking campaign has yielded enough evidence of gang stalking to where federal intervention was deemed necessary. So there is federal intervention in my clandestine gang stalking campaign. And since that federal intervention started, the circumstances that I run into on a daily basis, even the ones that are staged or derived, are a lot more sane than they were 8 years ago when I first moved to Miami-Dade County and there was no federal intervention. So ultimately, with respect to the U.S. military, I thank you for your service. But what I don't appreciate are those of you that work in an undercover capacity in and around me using gang stalking campaigns to achieve any goal you might have. And I imagine some of the military undercovers that I have use gang stalking techniques and strategies as a way of keeping themselves safer. Perhaps it's at the behest of their superiors. Perhaps it's at the behest of someone else. But you are utilizing gang stalking methods around me. And I consider it hostile and annoying. I consider it threatening. I consider it tasteless. I consider it thuggish. And given that the military-industrial complex gets, I think, $2 trillion a year from the taxpayer to operate, maybe take some of that money, right, and give it to some of your strategists in the form of resources and devise a classier way to go about this, because quite frankly, as a sovereign United States citizen who never asked to be in a gang stalking campaign, all right, this is an attack on my person, my character, my civil rights, my civil liberties, my civil freedoms, and my constitutional rights. So I'm not, again, given my own family involvement with the U.S. Armed Forces, and mind you, my paternal grandfather too, J.D. Smith, he was in the military at some point in his life. All right, so I have that in my family, and I myself was close, at least in my estimation, to going into a very hot combat situation at 18 years old. Apparently, none of that is taken into consideration when stalkers want to level their state-sanctioned mischief against you. I'd like to address also the zoo animal undercover operatives that I experience, ladies and gentlemen. And mind you, this lecture will go over the 1 hour mark because of the depth of the topic and because this opening introduction, which is going to lead into the high treason discussion, will contribute to that. Most of my lectures are within an hour. However, a number of them have gone into the 2 hour mark, depending on what I feel is necessary to talk about. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Undercover operatives of many different occupations and statuses and ranks and auxiliaries. You've made your presence felt, although I'm not terribly confident that the way you've made your presence felt is constitutional. I realize that with respect to national security, which gang stalking is obviously derivative of national security auspices. Okay, with respect to that, I think it's quite unfortunate that some of you have chosen to conduct yourselves in such a dirtbag fashion. And I want to like you. I want to like you. I do. Every undercover movie that I've ever watched, I rooted for the undercover in the movie. Everything I've learned about undercover operatives over the course of my life gave me an immense amount of respect for them. Given the consequences of what happens to undercovers if they're caught or uncovered by the organization that they are infiltrating, whether it's a drug cartel or a terrorist organization or a human smuggling ring. A child predator ring. When you infiltrate a criminal organization to gather evidence, it's a potentially perilous mission if you don't do your job right. Me personally, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure what these undercovers are investigating with me. If it's not gang stalking, that's the only thing I can think of that will require undercover operative attention to myself. Is what I say online in videos, posts, articles, and various other communicative methods about clandestine gang stalking. So I imagine that any undercover activity that I encounter has to do directly with what I'm asserting. And if there are any undercover operatives out there that have surveilled me, particularly over the past 8 years, and concluded that what they see is not gang stalking or any type of organized disruption, then shame on you. It's obvious to me. It's obvious to my significant other. It's probably obvious to people who know me that there is a shadowy, deleterious, and thuggish covert mechanism that perpetually follows me with the intention of doing harm. And a lot of you have disease spreading tactics that you use against me and others because it makes you feel safer. All right, some of you go to big, beautiful churches on Sunday after a 6-day work week of harassing people, attacking people, setting people up, smashing into people with your vehicles, and spreading germs to them. And then when you go to church that Sunday, you take communion, sing hymns, and worship Jesus. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. And I'm glad that however I was raised, I didn't end up like that. To where I'd see something like clandestine gang stalking as a way of making myself feel more important or useful. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to also address what I've referred to in various posts and articles as Miami-Dade County thugs. When I say Miami-Dade County thug, I mean anyone, regardless of race, gender, creed, demographic background, heritage, culture, language, or religious affiliation that participate in state-sanctioned signaling mechanisms with the intent of causing harm to others personally, physically, psychologically, financially, or occupationally. All right, what is a weasel, ladies and gentlemen? A weasel is a person that likes to cause damage to them, to other people in various aspects of their life, while incurring no risk to themselves. There are plenty of weasels in clandestine gang stalking campaigns that like to take part in gang stalking because they know that they can cause maximum damage to other people with very little risk to themselves. That's another part of the allure of gang stalking, is you get to cause commotions and cataclysms in the lives of other people without them being able to do the same to you. And the reason they can't do the same to you is because gang stalkers like to hide their dirt. They like to do it behind the scenes. They like to do it with other people, and they like to do it comfortably. And they like to do it remotely. And the various militaristic and semi-militaristic elements in gang stalking allows them to do that. Cause havoc in the lives of other people with very little risk to themselves. And I'm going to come back to this military matter with respect to that. Take a look at my 5-part series on weapons technology and gang stalking. It's on YouTube. You will see the various weapons technologies that are used against targeted individuals in clandestine gang stalking campaigns. There are dozens of them. Okay, GPS readers, data interceptors. There's thermal imaging. There's X-ray equipment used to see inside of targeted persons' bags or purses or other personal effects to see if they have weapons. And the reason X-ray technology is used by stalkers on targets, particularly on their book bags or other bags they may carry to see if they have weapons, is because a lot of the stalkers that are signaled to targets are violent. Some of them are homicidal. I've called out a few of the homicidal ones right here in the city of Kendall, Florida. And they're actually state assisted. There are state assisted murderers in the United States, ladies and gentlemen, and that I can promise you. Gang stalkers don't like evidence, they like narratives. And if you're good at building narratives and you create a narrative that is convincing enough, you can go out and find stalkers to kill somebody. And because gang stalking is state assisted, that state assisted murder could happen with no consequences for anybody. And that's part of the allure of gang stalking, ladies and gentlemen. Gang stalkers like being able to wreak havoc in people's lives, particularly people that they report to other stalkers as a threat to them. Whether or not that person's actually a threat is irrelevant. All a stalker who's plugged into this thing has to do is find other stalkers who are ready and willing to help him wreak havoc in the lives of other people. And being able to do so under the radar or in such a way so that the local police or local authorities would never be able to pick up on it. That's part of the allure of gang stalking. You can commit any crime imaginable as a gang stalker. All you need is a narrative, and all you need to do is talk to the right stalker, undercover operative, or liaison, and they'll help you commit any crime, even a crime against children. Okay, as I've often said, there is no limit to the depths of human depravity. Okay, the human mind is naturally inclined to commit horrible and atrocious acts against other people, including one's own family. There's just this natural envy and a natural selfishness and a natural inclination to sensuousness and violence that human beings are born with. No human is born good. Okay? A human being is born knowing nothing but itself. And everything a human being does typically is for his own good. Even if his own good is making himself feel good about harming another person. Okay? Some people kick out of that at some point in their life. Maybe they have parents that teach them otherwise, or teachers that teach them otherwise, or communities that teach them otherwise. This is why it's not good to harm your fellow man or attempt to harm your fellow man. Or this is why it is important to follow these legal instructions or those legal instructions in accordance with the law. Or this is why it's important to follow this commandment or that commandment because your Creator gave it to you. Or this is why you should conduct yourself in this way or that way because that's what the state requires. You see, a human has to be taught these things. No human is naturally or innately good. And quite frankly, even in a civil society, like the one we have here in the United States, despite all the hundreds of thousands or even millions of laws on the books, and mind you, these laws, particularly the ones that are on the criminal code of the United States, have consequences. Despite these untold numbers of laws that we have in this country, I'm talking if you were to stack on paper every law that we have in this country, that stack of paper would go from here on earth, on the ground, all the way to the moon. All right, that stack of paper would go from here into outer space. That's how many laws we have. And we need that many laws. I mean, just think of it. Humans are a species of creature that needs millions or tens of millions of laws on the books so that he can live in a civil society. And not only tens of millions of laws, but you also need about 613 commandments from a creator on top of those laws. So it's not just the legal code. You need the legal code and you need religion. And not just religion, but a religion that will guarantee that if you don't conduct yourself in this life, you're going to burn in a lake of fire for all of eternity. Do you understand? We need all of these things. All of these things just to make human beings act right. Do you understand? Think of that for a second. Think of how cataclysmic this world would be if we didn't have laws. And not just legal laws, but laws that are considered to be spiritual laws. All of these things are needed collectively just to make people act right. So what does that tell you about human nature? Okay, I've quoted political scientists in the past that have said very openly, the reason we have government at all is to check the human inclination to do evil. All right, that is something that should be thought about. I would like to address another matter before we get into the high treason element of the lecture. I would like to address the religious establishment. So, you know, I've mentioned in various other lectures that I've been a member of various churches and institutions over the course of my life. My parents went to a lot of churches when we were coming up because they wanted to find one that was right for them. So, in my upbringing, I went to a lot of different churches. And as a matter of fact, one of the schools that I went to growing up was a Christian school over in Knoxville, Tennessee. First Apostolic Christian School. It's a wonderfully run school. They've done so many renovations since the 90s. I've been a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 2.5 years. Then I resigned because I was experiencing clandestine gang stalking in the church. And my reasons for joining the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was not self-serving. When I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
video by Emmanuel Isaiah Smith,
in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't know what gang stalking was. I knew that something was happening around me. That was disruptive and destructive. But I didn't know that what I was experiencing was called gang stalking. I didn't learn what gang stalking was until about my second year of being a member. Now, when I started experiencing gang stalking in the church, in the form of various pestering mechanisms, I knew I had to leave. So I did. And I have no regrets about anything that I ever said or did in the church. And to this day, I know the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has eyes on me and my project, and has instigated or initiated acts of violence against me here in Miami-Dade County. I know the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is in on that. And I know that there are cowboy members of that church that probably have all these adjectives they use to describe me. He's a Jack Mormon, or that's what they call guys who left. They probably call me an apostate. That's another name they use for guys who have left the church. They probably got hooked into local thugs here in Miami-Dade County and local dirtbag undercover operatives and various other deleterious persons that participate in clandestine gang stalking. People that they wouldn't allow into their church. Okay? The kind of people that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is plugged into as a way of finding out where I'm at right now and what I'm doing and what I'm up to. All right, the kinds of people that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has plugged into here in Kendall, Florida, here in Miami-Dade County, Florida. The kind of people that they've plugged into to keep an eye on me are the kinds of people who, if they tried to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they'd be turned down flat. They would say something like, well, we're not sure you're worthy. We're not sure you're worthy of our priesthood. We're not sure that you're worthy of our baptism. We're not sure you're worthy of our temple. We're not sure you're worthy of our missionary lessons. We're not sure you're worthy to sit in our sacrament meetings. We're not so sure you're worthy to give talks on the gospel of Jesus Christ in our congregations. We're not sure you're worthy to sit in fellowship with us. And we don't think you're worthy to participate in our baby blessings if you ever have children. We're not sure you're worthy of this gospel that we preach, and we just think you're better off going somewhere else. So those same unworthy people are the same kinds of people that the church manipulates to do its bidding on the ground against targets like myself in clandestine gang stalking campaigns. And it hurts to say this, because when I was a member for that 2.5 years, I encountered a lot of loving people. Probably on average, the most loving people that I've ever seen. And they treated me like family, a lot of them. They fellowshiped with me. They brought me into their homes. They were really good to me. They were. And I didn't know how to repay all that love, so I just did what I could. But when I started experiencing synchronous disruption methods in the church, I realized that I was not safe from whatever it was I was experiencing outside the church. One of the reasons I joined was because, as I said earlier in this lecture, I wanted to try and escape or beat whatever this organized harassment I was experiencing outside of the church was. I figured if I join a church like this, and it seems like a good church, that I would be able to get away from whatever this mechanism is. But the mechanism followed me into the church. I didn't know it was gang stalking at the time. Otherwise, I'd have probably told my bishop, hey, there's this thing called gang stalking. You know, there's not a lot of information on it right now, but I think I'm experiencing it. And I think it's affecting my church membership. I'd have told my bishop that. He'd have probably told the stake president, and I would have talked to the stake president about it as well. Do I have members, active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints listening to me right now live from somewhere? Yeah. They are very involved in my gang stalking campaign. And I hope that the church turns away from gang stalking at some point. Because it would be nice to see a church like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints succeed and do well for humanity. It would. But and I'm not talking about every member of the church. There are 16 million members of the church. I'm not saying all 16 million of them are gang stalkers, but I believe some of them are. And I believe that there are those at the higher levels of the church, and also those in the defense wing of the church, and those in the church that are members of the departments of defense and justice that are advanced gang stalkers, and that they do stage catastrophes in the lives of their members and other people. So, ultimately, you can't use the name of Jesus Christ to commit acts of thuggery in the community. You can't use the name of Jesus Christ to justify gang stalking. You can't use the name of Jesus Christ to commit acts of state-sponsored murder. Even against members like myself who resigned from the church. And I resigned angrily. Because that's what you do in the church. You don't just stop going. You have to formally resign. So when I formally resigned, I did so angrily, because I knew that some of what I experienced in church which is considered the house of God for all intents and purposes, I was experiencing that by the same people, some of them that had just taken communion or sacrament hours before. You can't use the name of Jesus Christ to cause trouble in people's lives. I don't care what Bible verses you quote. I don't care who your favorite prophets or apostles are. And I don't care how many baptisms for the dead you've done in your life. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you have children that you raise in the faith or in any Christian faith. You, as a member of American society, are bound and sustained by the same laws that I am. And if you use the name of Jesus Christ as justification to perpetrate acts of semi-terrorism or domestic terrorism against people's personal, professional, or church lives, you're committing crimes against humanity. And as I often say, people who use the name of Jesus Christ to justify their gang stalking activity are, in my estimation, pitiful people. And anyone from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who has attempted to cause me any harm, personally, professionally, academically, psychologically, spiritually, or financially, you can go right to hell. And I say that in the name of my Creator and yours. There are members of the church that to this day, if they were to ask me to do something for them, I would do it. As I said, I don't think it's all the members that participate in gang stalking. I don't. But there are those of you who have plugged into the gang stalking mechanism for this reason or that, possibly to cause me harm, possibly to disrupt me, possibly to cause my significant other harm, who is a woman. I believe you plugged into my clandestine gang stalking campaign. Members of the church are working with the gang stalker community and its state-sanctioned elements to disrupt me. That isn't the work of your God. That isn't the work of your Savior. That is the work of your devil or your Satan. And quite frankly, I have no sympathy for anyone who perpetrates crimes against humanity in the name of Jesus Christ. And lastly, I would like to address, ladies and gentlemen, those in the Miami-Dade County community and in the community at large throughout the country that use gang stalking and similar derivative mechanisms to perpetrate violence against women, It's a real shame. It's pitiful. It's pathetic. You want to harm women. You want to terrorize women. You want to put them in some sort of a subjugated posture to yourself. And you use a state-sanctioned, behind-the-scenes, cowardly, clandestine, and thuggish attack mechanism to accomplish that. You're a piece of shit. And I don't consider you a man. You're not a man. All right, you use a weaselly, disgusting, state-sanctioned attack mechanism to harm women. Because it makes you feel like more of a man to harm a woman. Okay, I'll say it again. You're a piece of shit. And I don't care if what you do is in the name of Jesus Christ. I don't care if what you do is in the name of civil society or national security. I don't care if what you do is just out of general spite or hatred for your female co-part, your female opposites. I don't care if what you do is something you feel is your divine right. You're a piece of shit. And you're a coward. Such a coward, in fact, that the violence or harm you wish to cause to women, you can't even do it in person so that she can see who her attacker is. You want to attack her behind closed doors using a remote thuggery mechanism, a remote attack mechanism, or some other remote disruption protocol to her person so that you don't get caught. You're a piece of shit. And it's unfortunate that men like you, I'm particularly talking to the men who use gang stalking's auspices to bring harm to women. It's a shame that guys like you exist at all. It's a shame that guys like you are brought into this world. And it's a shame that people like myself, like my significant other, okay, have to share a world with you. Why? Because you're a piece of shit. I mean, imagine a world, ladies and gentlemen, where a grown man or a group of grown men are able to use a clandestine or third-party mechanism with other like-minded pieces of shit to pester, harass, or attack women with without there being any risk of being discovered by her. All right, a piece of shit doesn't begin to describe what you are. You're a piece of dog shit. And a lot of you use clandestine gang stalking and its harassment tactics, its attack tactics, its germ spreading tactics, and its other thuggery to attack women specifically. Okay, your target is a woman. And your goal is to harm her in such a way so as to keep yourself out of harm's way, to keep yourself from being discovered, to keep yourself from being seen, to keep yourself from prosecution, and to keep her and other people from recognizing that you are the piece of shit behind the whole thing. You're using a state-sanctioned signaling, attack, and harassment protocol against women who are very harmed by what you do, but never see your face. And you do it as a targeting mechanism to her. You're a piece of shit. And that will conclude this opening to the High Treason lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. We will get over into the High Treason portion of the lecture presently. When you talk about gang stalking as a political problem, you talk about it as a treasonous construct. How and why is it treasonous? It's treasonous because it's state enabled. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, the mechanism that we call clandestine gang stalking is one of cowardice, it's one of violence, it's one of hatred, it's one of secrecy. And when I say secrecy, ladies and gentlemen, no one was ever supposed to know that what they were experiencing was a program. Okay, that information leaked. We weren't supposed to know as a civil society that gang stalking was derivative of COINTELPRO Operation Hoodwink. No one was supposed to know that gang stalking had roots in federal, state, and local military and semi-military components. No one was supposed to know that the Department of Justice had a hand in its orchestration. No one was supposed to know that the intelligence community had a role. No one was supposed to know that The auspices of the program were rooted in population control, social engineering, okay, militia matters, rebellion, secessionism, bigotry, corruption, okay, loathing against one's fellow citizen, okay, luxury. Some people see participating in gang stalking as a luxury. Some people do it with their kids and grandkids. I mean, I see a lot of stalkers take their kids and grandkids out on stalking expeditions, and they pester people while their children and grandchildren are present. Maybe they want their kids or grandkids to be stalkers when they grow up and do the same kind of crap they do. I mean, these gang stalkers are an interesting lot. Some of them take their wives out on dates, and the wife thinks that they're going out on a romantic evening, but really their husband's taking them out on a damn stalking expedition. You know, some of you dads and husbands, you don't tell your family that you're a gang stalker. You do it, and you perpetrate it, but you don't tell your family, hey, I'm going out stalking today, or I'm going out on a pestering expedition. I'll be taking signals from people and finding ways to get in strangers' faces with all kinds of germ spreading and synchronization, just because it makes me feel better as a human being or as a citizen. You know, it's been a long work week. I'm stressed out. I need a way to relax. I'm going to go out for a while and go on a stalking expedition, see if I can pester some targets. All right, you don't tell your wife and kids that. You tell them, hey, I'm going to Home Depot. I'll be back in a few hours. Or you go, hey, I'm going out golfing with the fellas. I'll be back later. Or, hey, honey, I'm going to the gym. I'll be back in a while. Or, hey, honey, I'm taking Junior out to Fuddruckers to get some hamburgers. Well, I'll be back later. You don't tell them that you're going out stalking. You don't tell them you're leaving the house with the sole intention of pestering people. You don't tell them you're taking Junior to the mall or to the grocery store so that you can teach him how to be a jack-off when he gets older. And those of you that go out on stalking expeditions on yourself and you leave your families at home, you don't tell them you're going out for a stalking expedition. Maybe now's the time to come clean to your family. Maybe now's the time to come home and sit your wife and kids down and say, you all, this ain't easy for me, but there's something I gotta tell you. Honey, kids, Daddy's a gang stalker. And the reason I got to tell you that now is because that Emmanuel Isaiah Smith person who's online, he exposed me in front of the whole world. And before this gets out of control, and President Trump declares a state of emergency over gang stalking, I would rather tell you myself. Honey, kids, your dad's a low-life schmuck. And he uses gang stalking as a way of making himself feel above the fray. Ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about gang stalking, you talk about a situation where you have a co-op, as it were, between state-sanctioned actors various companies, various governmental auxiliaries, various federal, state, and local actors, including semi-law enforcement, semi-military, and military actors, in an attempt to seize the trajectory of society in this country by the very hairs on its head. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of these stalkers that come around targets pestering them, who have been given the signal to do so by another stalker, who feels protected because they're a part of a cabal of stalkers, a lot of them are under direction by state actors, federal and state actors, so that when they go out and do their pestering, or their disruption, or their sabotage, or their homicidal vehicular maneuvers on people, they can do so and feel safe. Hey, I'm doing what I do in the name of the state. I do what I do in the name of society, American society. I can go out and pester whoever I want, however I want. All I got to do is wait for the signal and I'm safe. So because that this is a state-funded program that is responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, it is high treason. It is high treason on the part of the participants, and it is high treason on the part of governmental actors who have helped orchestrate it, implement it, monitor it, finance it, and protect it. All right, Benedict Arnold, who in the year 1741 and onward is considered one of the greatest traitors in American history, never betrayed his country the way gang stalkers betray theirs, the way these undercover operatives betray theirs, the way these state-enabled liaisons betray theirs. It is a state-sanctioned, population-based, society-based, community-based, neighborhood-based attack squadron that is mobilized against targeted United States citizens simply to give them a leg up in their daily lives, in their occupations, in their trajectories through their life, which I consider to be useless. That's why I call gang stalkers useless idiots. And they further attack people like me who have figured out their thuggery and post my findings online for the whole world to see. I post instances of their thuggery online for the whole world to see. I have scientifically broken down their thuggery, and I've made it known so the whole world can see it, can hear it, can examine it, can analyze it, can understand it. And can know not to participate in it. You stalkers are a bunch of violent thugs. You're homicidal. You're maniacs. You're pesterers. You're violent. You're criminal. You're weasels. You're deleterious, and you're cowardly. And quite frankly, the truth is out there whether you like it or not. The religious establishment does not have to acknowledge it. The political establishment doesn't have to acknowledge it. Its intelligence apparatus, its national security apparatus, they don't have to acknowledge it. It's enough of an embarrassment that the auspices of this program leaked onto the internet. That's enough of an embarrassment right there. You don't have to acknowledge it. You don't have to do anything but continue being the stalker you are, and continue going out and wreaking havoc in society with no recourse. It's protected thuggery. It's state-protected thuggery. And it operates in spite of U.S. constitutional laws and freedoms. All of this could have been avoided with some transparency. All of this could have been avoided with respect for constitutional precepts. All of this could have been avoided with some common decency. All of this could have been avoided with some intelligence. Because mind you, ladies and gentlemen, it was dumb, it was stupid, it was buffoonish for the national security and intelligence apparatus of this country to even implement this in the first place. What did you think people weren't going to find out? Or did you think you were just going to be able to deny it forever and participate in this luxurious product that allows you to wreak havoc in people's personal and professional lives endlessly to your own benefit, because you eliminate competition in the workplace, in society, in relationships, when you have a state-sanctioned murder, harassment, intimidation, burglary, and other mechanisms that you can use at your disposal against anybody for any reason. And you're protected. You feel protected in what you do because the useful idiot stalkers that are being used in this program look out for each other. And because you're protected by the state, whether you know it or not and whether you like it or not, your activity is state sanctioned and you're protected by the state. And, it's pitiful and it's pathetic on its face. And humanity is going to remember these times. Humanity is going to remember gang stalking. Generations from now, millennia from now, humans are going to talk about gang stalking. And they're going to laugh at the people who participated in it because you thought you were doing something secret. You thought you were manipulating society, manipulating the markets, the job markets, the financial markets, all the markets. You thought you were engineering society in a thuggish, covert, and anti-meritocratic fashion to your own ends. And you thought you were doing it secretly. That's what's so pitiful about this. That's what's so pathetic about it, is you stalkers, you thought you were doing this secretly. You didn't think you'd be caught. You thought you were going to be able to operate with impunity forever. You thought you were going to be able to pester men, women, and children with impunity forever. I just had some thug not 5 minutes ago named Ralph, who hangs out in Olympic Park, Kendall, Florida, which is the area that I've done citizen patrol in over the past 7 months. He's got extensive criminal connections in Miami-Dade County, including sex predators, dope dealers, rapists, and murderers. And this scumbag just drove by on a bicycle as I was talking and stopped to hear what I was saying, so he can go back and report to some of his thug buddies what I was saying. Okay, that's part of the synchronization mechanism here in the United States. Since starting citizen patrol in Olympic Park back in July, I have observed probably every possible categorization of criminal. You got car thieves back there. You got cartel members back there. You got assassins back there. You got rapists back there. You got crime ring leaders back there. All right. You got car thieves back there. You got arms dealers back there. You have cartel members back there. You got illegal aliens back there. You got human smugglers back there. You have robbers and muggers back there. You have assault people back there. Any possible crime you could possibly think of. You got people in Olympic Park in Kendall, Florida, that participate in it. And since starting Citizen Patrol back in July, my investigations, along with the work of an officer that I report to ever so often, resulted into the arrests of a number of them. But they keep coming back. If one goes to jail, two more appear. If another goes to jail, two more appear. If another goes to jail, two more appear. And they're all in the same criminal network. And quite frankly, I suspect certain staff members of Miami-Dade Public Library System of plugging into those thugs as a way of accomplishing different goals of their own. And I've reported that to the mayor's office and to the Board of County Commissioners of Miami-Dade County, if I'm not mistaken, and to the FBI, and to the Department of Justice, and to the State Attorney's Office. I've also mentioned it to a number of sheriff deputies, my suspicions of Miami-Dade Public Library System as well. And I don't just think that library systems plugs into the thugs that hang out in Olympic Park, which is just behind the Kendall Lakes, Florida Library. I think that Miami-Dade Public Library System as a holistic entity has ways of plugging into local thugs to accomplish goals, particularly that of getting rid of patrons that the staff at these libraries don't like. Furthermore, they participate in revenge missions. And they file a lot of false, slanderous, libelous, and criminally negligent incident reports against patrons that they don't like, not only to get rid of them, but to harm their image and character and reputation. I've said it in various capacities. I think Daniela Levine Cava is an excellent mayor. I think that the Board of County Commissioners does an excellent job of being good stewards of Miami-Dade County, given its unique geographic region, unique populace, and unique challenges. But the library system is corrupt from top to bottom. It's a criminal enterprise. A lot of the employees and staff members are involved in various organized criminal activities that I can promise you. Even the ones who got wives and kids or husbands and kids, etc., etc. Even the ones that go to church. Okay, and these revelations will prove disastrous for the image of the United States because it's treason. It's not just treason, it's high treason. I mean, what did you think, stalkers? What did you think? That I was just going to sit by and let you do this? Of course I was going to fight you administratively. Of course I was going to put your dirt on the internet. Of course I was going to expose you. Of course I was going to call you useful idiots and pieces of shit. That's what you are. Of course I was going to call you schmucks and pricks. You remotely pester and harm people. And that's gang stalkers across the board. You don't have to be a member or a staff member or an employee of the Miami-Dade Public Library system. You could work at Walmart, Target, or Best Buy for all I give a damn. When you're on the clock, and when you leave work, you participate in a state-sanctioned attack mechanism against sovereign U.S. citizens. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, if I'm under investigation for anything, I haven't been told nothing. If I'm under investigation by the Department of Defense or the Department of Justice or Santa Claus or his grandmama, I don't know. I haven't been told anything. I'm a U.S. citizen who is a political commentator by trade, a small business owner by trade, an entrepreneur by trade, that exercises my First Amendment rights against something that is obviously a state-sanctioned evil. What's the problem? Any of you stalkers listening to me right now using bugging equipment or espionage equipment, that are looking to use what I say as justification for a future attack, go find the nearest dumpster and throw yourself into it and close the lid. Because that's what you are. You're a piece of trash. You are constantly using state-sanctioned espionage, synchronization, signaling, and attack mechanisms to perpetrate violent crimes against sovereign United States citizens from a clandestine posture so that nothing comes back on you. Go find the nearest swamp and throw yourself into it. All right, you pester men and women alike with these hostile tricks. These deceptive practices. These hostile or violent machinations. And you do so with impunity because what you do is state sanctioned. You operate with the power of the state. Because yes, there are thugs that work in the American governmental establishment who have not only crafted this piece of garbage called gang stalking, but you continually sustain it. All right, and those of you listening in on bugging equipment and surveillance equipment right now, particularly those who have not sworn an oath of service to their state or community, particularly those who are not members of the Department of Defense or Justice, but you're just arbitrary gang stalkers who have access to spying equipment. I'll tell you what you should do today. Go on a helicopter ride, and when you get a good 10,000 feet in the air, jump out of the helicopter. Okay, and I'd like to say a word about Cuba while I'm thinking about it. The county that I live in is 85% Cuban, if I'm not mistaken. The overwhelming vast majority of Cuban Americans are Spanish speaking and only speak in Spanish. It doesn't bother me any. I mean, the reason I'm here in Miami-Dade, Florida, the reason I do citizen patrol, the reason I do anything I do is to get a better understanding of gang stalking. I couldn't care less what the language of the majority population here is. Ladies and gentlemen, Cuba is approximately 95 miles off of the coast of where I'm sitting right now in Miami-Dade County. Cuba was recently described as the United States ambassador to the United Nations as a terrorist country. For some reason, that's not a big deal to anybody. I mean, I'm trying to. It's okay. I mean, apparently in the United States in these times, things like that are not important. It might just be the American societal mindset. I don't know. Americans just don't seem that concerned with anything. But that's okay. I am not a pastor, a minister, an evangelist. I'm not a self-help coach. Okay? I'm none of those things. If people want to be apathetic about what's going on around them, that's their business. I am not concerned with that. My concern is, why is it that the American news media has shut up about the reality that a country just 90 miles off the coast of the United States has been declared a terrorist sponsor? Why is that not news? Are there terror cells operating in the United States right now? Yes. There are terror cells right here in Miami-Dade County. Does the Cuban government sponsor and supply those terror cells with weapons, technology, etc.? Yes. Do those terror cells that operate in Miami-Dade County use gang stalking tactics to get around and communicate? Yes. So what we have is we have state complacency with a state sponsor of terrorism. That in itself is high treason. Why? Because the reason we have state complacency with foreign terror cells here in Miami-Dade County is because those terrorists use the same gang stalking communication mechanisms and the same tactics that John Doe and his family use in a suburban setting. All gang stalkers use the same tactics. Okay, the people in the United States Air Force that use those mechanisms are using the same mechanisms as Miami-Dade terror cells. They're all using the same mechanisms, even though they're on different sides of the spectrum. But if you were to tell them that, they'd probably still continue to use those methods and mechanisms. Why? America's just an apathetic place. Does the U.S. Air Force have members in it that use clandestine gang stalking to achieve goals? Yeah. Do they use the same kinds of gang stalking mechanisms that terrorists use? Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to again during this lecture to invoke my First Amendment right under the United States Constitution to say what I'm saying. Do I want to like my country? Yes. Why do you want to like your country, Smith? You might ask yourself. Who doesn't want to like the country they're born in? As I often say in my lectures, if you had to talk to a 10-year-old version of Emmanuel, Isaiah Smith, and said, "What do you think of your country, young man?" I would have said back to you, I love my country. I think it's a good country. I think it's a Christian country. I think it's a well-protected country. I think it's a successful country. I think it's a wealthy country. I think there's opportunity here. I think it's a capitalist country. I think we have a United States Constitution. I think there are plenty of opportunities for people to succeed here. And I think it's respected around the world. And that wouldn't be just my opinions that I just formed arbitrarily as a 10-year-old. It's what I really believed. Based on the history books that I've read, based on the news stories that I've seen, based on conversations that I've had with my teachers and pastors, and sermons that I've heard, and being able to see my parents remain gainfully employed throughout my young life. If you were to ask me that same question at the age of 20, I'd say, well, it's a good country. I'm I'm able to take advantage of voting. I'm able to become employed. I'm able to carry on relationships. I'm able to pursue an education. I'm able to worship as I please or not. All right. I'm able to participate in the job market. I'm able to pay my taxes and do tax returns. I'm able to own property. I'm able to own and operate a motor vehicle. I'm entitled to my constitutional rights and freedoms. And I'm happy with my existence on this earth as an American. If you had to ask me at 30, what do you think of America? I'd say, well, I'm generally satisfied with being an American. There are some things happening here I disagree with. I'm experiencing some things that I think are bad and disruptive. But I believe that if I expose these things, I can make a path forward for myself and my progeny. Now, if you ask me at the age of 40, what do you think about America? I'll tell you, well, I'd rather move to England or China or Vietnam or Japan or Australia or Switzerland, Finland, Norway, Russia. I'd happily move to Russia. I'd like to move to Israel or Egypt. Maybe you guys can set it up to where I can move to Tunisia or Carthage, or maybe you guys can let me move to Romania, or maybe you guys could set me up with a passport. Maybe I could move to Czechoslovakia or perhaps the Czech Republic. I hear Cambodia is nice this time of year. Maybe I could move to Thailand or Malaysia. Maybe I could move somewhere else in the United Kingdom, maybe like Scotland or Wales, or I'm hearing that various points in India are beautiful. Maybe I could move to Saudi Arabia. I hear they have a really nice tourist industry there, or maybe the U.S. federal government can set me up with a passport, and maybe I could move out to Japan, or maybe I could move to Transylvania, or I think Transylvania's in Romania, though. I've already said that. But maybe Timbuktu or Tibet. Maybe I could move off of the coast of Samoa or something, or maybe I could find myself a nice passport and take my significant other Lori to Rome, Italy, or maybe we could go to France, or um, so if you ask me, so you see how the progression of my thinking as a United States citizen has changed because of gang stalking. Okay, you go from an optimistic 20-year-old boy to an optimistic 20-year-old man to a slightly disgruntled 30-year-old to a 40-year-old who just wants to get the hell out of the country altogether. So you see how my thinking has changed over the past 30 years. I don't know how I got in a clandestine gang stalking campaign. There were times where I tried to have fun with it. I'm trying to have fun with it right now. Okay, there are obviously some things changing. There's obviously some kind of an intervention happening. I don't know exactly the extent of that intervention, but there's an intervention happening right now. Do I experience clandestine gang stalking on a daily basis? Yeah. Is it disruptive? Yeah. Does it make it difficult to go about your life? Yeah. Are your stalkers operating in a hostile capacity towards you? Yeah. Do you want to believe in your country again? Yes. Okay, all of these questions are questions that could be reasonably asked to me, and I would give you an honest answer. I am harsh with my words. I'm brutal with my words because gang stalking itself is harsh and brutal. It can get frustrating, ladies and gentlemen, when you put together lectures and you post articles and you make your thoughts on this thing known. And then when you upload the post to the internet so that everyone can see it, not just commoners, not just everyday people, not just your typical U.S. citizen, but elected officials, members of the Department of Defense, members of the Department of Justice. The worldwide community can hear what I'm saying. And it's to my benefit, and it's to the benefit of other targeted persons. And ultimately, it'll be to the benefit of society. Because when this program is fully discovered and rooted out, it can make for a clearer path forward for all Americans. And I, your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, am happy to procure that path forward for all Americans. Even the ones in the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice and our elected officials, all Americans deserve a clear path forward. Okay? If covert operations are used in this country, I believe they should be used in a responsible way that is conducive with constitutional values and precepts. Okay? I abhor deleterious legislation. I abhor it. And the reason I abhor it is because it makes legal various behaviors that can be seen as anti-constitutional and deleterious. Some of them can even be seen as crimes against humanity, ladies and gentlemen. You got gang stalkers out here spreading diseases. You got gang stalkers out here who are being routinely pestered with diseases. Sick gang stalkers who have sicknesses and are suffering from symptoms, are being signaled to targeted individuals with the instructions or the intentions of communicating whatever their sickness is to the target that they have been signaled to. You know, I've oftentimes said, ladies and gentlemen, that gang stalkers are useful idiots, and that, in my estimation, is accurate. Okay, my estimation is that God himself, the creators of all things, looks at some of these people and says, man, they are idiots. And that's across the demographic spectrum, ladies and gentlemen. That's any man, woman, or child that participates in this thuggery. Okay? It boggles the mind what people are capable of if they feel they can get away with it. Quite frankly, it's pathetic, actually. It's pathetic. Because there are actually people that participate in this thing and think it's going to enhance their relationships with people. Well, maybe if I take my girlfriend out on a date today and use some gang stalking against people while she's watching, she'll think I'm a big shot or something. Or maybe if I take my kids out on an outing this Sunday and show them a signal or two, they'll think I'm a hero. Or maybe if I take my grandmother out to a buffet and show her how synchronized pestering works, she'll think I'm a nice young man. Or maybe at this next baptism, if I do some signaling or do a little gang stalking, or maybe I do a little synchronization at this baptism I'm about to go to, the pastor will think I'm some holier than thou schmuck. That has the capacity to pester people without recourse. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's pastors out there that do gang stalking. Some do it because they're bored with their work. They're bored with being a pastor. They're bored with Jesus. They're bored with the Bible. They're bored with Moses. They're bored with Satan. They want to spice up their love life because their wife is equally bored with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So one day one of his deacons walks up to him and goes, "Hey, pastor, I see what's going on in your life, and I prayed to God and asked him what I could do for you, and he told me, Pastor. He told me that what you need in your life is some clandestine gang stalking. And I'm going to teach you how to do it too, Pastor, because I, as your deacon, have been plugged into the gang stalking mechanism for many years, Pastor. And me, my wife, my kids, we all do it, Pastor. It's something I'm going to pass down to my grandkids and my great-grandkids. And don't worry, Pastor, you ain't offended Jesus by doing none of this either. You are essentially participating in something that a lot of Americans participate in. All right? Don't worry about that Emmanuel Isaiah Smith guy. He's going to call you a useful idiot. He's going to call you a gang stalker. He's going to call you a piece of trash. He's going to call you a piece of garbage. But don't worry about that, Pastor, because God is on your side. God is on your side in this, Pastor. And mind you, ladies and gentlemen, this is a hypothetical scenario. And what's the pastor say? Well, how does it help the church? All right, the deacon is qualifying him. The deacon's recruiting him. Well, it helps the church in this way, Pastor. There are a few congregants that participate in gang stalking too in this church. You can communicate with them through signals. And they can tell you everything that's going on in the congregation. Well, the pastor, what does he do? Of course he agrees to it. He's even of the mindset that increased participation in this clandestine gang stalking thing will help his congregation grow. My congregation is only 300 people, the pastor thinks to himself. But if we make this a church that is accepting the people who practice gang stalking, maybe in 5 years we can grow this congregation to 3,000 people. This could be a church where we preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and the gospel of gang stalking right side by side. All we got to do is find a Bible verse that we think All we got to do is find a Bible verse that looks like it justifies gang stalking, and we can participate in until the cows come home. And in the last day, if God asks you, why'd you participate in gang stalking? We can say, well, God, we found a Bible verse that advocates it. I just had some prick, ladies and gentlemen, while I was talking, walk up with his girlfriend. And remember, I said that gang stalkers do that. They take their girlfriends out and they take signals, and the girlfriend has no idea what the hell's going on, but the guy is a stalker and he's taking signals around her. This guy just got on the phone and told somebody I was out here talking to myself. I don't know who the hell that schmuck was, who his girlfriend was, or what the hell he was doing here in this exact spot, I'm on Kendall Drive and 157th Avenue right now. But he just mumbled something saying that there's some guy out here talking to himself. I'm recording something, you idiot. And that's something that a lot of gang stalkers do. They like to misconstrue and create false narratives as to what a targeted person was doing. That idiot was just over here watching me because someone told him to do it. And like any gang stalker, he's a useful idiot, and you can tell him to do anything so long as you're a connected stalker and you give him the right signal. So he brought his butt over here just to watch me, and then he made a comment to that broad he was with that I'm over here talking to myself. They have no idea. This is a recording. It's going on the internet. You see, we're talking about stuff like what they do. You know, ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about high treason, you talk about governmental crimes that harm large numbers of people. The U.S. Constitution allows for none of that. None of that is authorized. None of that is authorized. You know, gang stalkers like to label targets. Oh, he's this, he's that, he's dangerous. You know, gang stalkers need constant narratives, ladies and gentlemen. Constant narratives. That's what their operation runs on. It runs off of narratives, not truth, not evidence, but narratives. If you're a stalker and you can create the right narrative on a person, you can get them pestered for a long time, whether they're a man, woman, or child. I suspect there are children targeted individuals in the country right now. There are people walking by. Some of them have criminal backgrounds that I know of personally. I don't know them personally, but having done a little research on them using the citizen patrol mechanism, I found that they have criminal backgrounds. Are walking past me and riding past me on bikes. They don't know what I'm talking about. They don't understand what I'm saying. But they'll spread it about that I'm sitting over here for 2.5 hours cussing out Cuban people. It's a pitiful situation, ladies and gentlemen. Some of these stalkers just have no idea. This is not an attack on Cuban people. As I've said, I have made Ohio, Tennessee, and Florida my permanent residences throughout my 40 years. I've experienced gang stalking in all three by white, black, Hispanic, the entire demographic spectrum, ladies and gentlemen. I've experienced gang stalking at the hands of all of them. I certainly hope that a path forward can be forged for all Americans, gang stalkers included. I'm not a terribly vengeful person. I'm not a hateful person. If I call you a useful idiot, that's because I genuinely perceive you as a useful idiot. If I call you a gang stalker, it's because I genuinely perceive you to be a gang stalker. You know, you might not be able to hear it right now because I typically set my lectures to classical music, but in the background, I'm sitting here in front of the Fuddruckers restaurant. That song by Boston, the rock band Boston, More Than a Feeling, is playing. And it's a really amazing song. It's wonderfully composed. Boston is considered one of the greatest rock bands in history. And yeah, what I'm talking about is more than a feeling. Just like that classic rock and roll song that Boston made all those years ago. This is not a feeling. This is not an emotional project. This is a project rooted in fact, rooted in evidence, rooted in research, rooted in philosophy, rooted in governmental matters, rooted in experience, rooted in constitutional ideals and precepts. I don't do these lectures on a whim. I do them extemporaneously based on my research and based on what I know about clandestine gang stalking. And no, I've never injured a gang stalker in my life. Even the ones I thought were pestering my significant other, Lori. I simply confronted them verbally or I called the police on them. When the police arrive, maybe they think the scene is worth investigating, maybe they don't. But I've never attacked a gang stalker. I've never attacked an undercover operative. I've never attacked a liaison. I've never attacked a member of the armed services. I've never attacked a police officer. I work with the police in a citizen patrol capacity. Although that capacity has become less and less over the past month or so. Not out of a sense of disillusionment or a sense of not wanting to do it. It's just, it's something I had been doing for 5 to 7 days a week. And at some point you realize that some things you can control and some things you don't. Apparently felons and people with all kinds of criminal backgrounds are free to go to public parks. And see, what these guys do is they like to sort of straddle the line between harassment and just minding their own business, intimidation and just minding their own business, threats and just minding their own business, menacing and just minding their own business, violence and just minding their own business, robbery and just minding their own business, dope dealing and just minding their own business, weapon smuggling and just minding their own business, conspiracy to commit murder and just minding their own business. And yeah, they're gang stalkers, and gang stalkers are good at that. They're good at straddling the line between what's legal and illegal, what's detectable and what's not detectable, what's reportable and what's not reportable, what the police can do about something and what they can't. You see? These knuckleheads that hang out in Olympic Park, the ones I've been watching for the past 7 months, like any criminal organization, they're good at straddling the line between what's legal and what's not legal. They're good at hiding their intentions. They're good at intimidating you just enough to where they may or may not be seen as committing any kind of a crime. And there's a white vehicle that just pulled up, license plate RCTJ40. It's a white Hyundai Elantra. The driver just pulled up to me and they're blowing exhaust fumes my way, carbon monoxide fumes. And he'll probably get out of the car. It's a single Hispanic male passenger. He'll probably get out of the car and do something or another to pester me while I'm talking. So I'm going to move out of the way here. And that's something that a targeted individual sees a lot with gang stalkers, is they like to crowd your space. They like to get in your face. They like to attack you with vehicles. They like to attack you with words. And sometimes they attack you physically. You know, me myself, I'm 6'5", 200 and something odd pounds. So I don't encounter a lot of persons that are wishing to get in any type of a physical altercation with me. Although some have signaled that they'd like to, but they back off, probably for fear of going to jail or being the subject of my next lecture. But yeah, they do that. I mean, if you're on a bus, there could be 20 empty seats. And the stalker will sit in the seat that is directly in front of you or directly beside you so as to pester you. Or maybe you're sitting somewhere and there's a parking lot and there are 30 free parking spaces, but a stalker will park in the parking space closest to you so when they get out of their car, they can have easier access to you to pester you. Okay, when a target is signaled to you, they are signaled to you indeed. And their goal is to pester you. Okay? And quite frankly, gang stalking being the complex, multifaceted topic that it is, sometimes people don't really grasp all that's being said, and they take bits and pieces of what you say and try to create some false narrative out of what you say, or they try and characterize what you say as a threat or something like that, so they'll have a justification to continue vilifying you. You know, it kind of takes me back to the membership that I had from approximately 2014 to 2016 in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You know, I don't want any of the members of that church that knew me personally to be confused about what I'm saying. I believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as an international conglomerate that has a net worth in the trillions, has components of it that are part of the gang stalking mechanism, particularly the espionage and derivative staging mechanisms. Okay? I believe that a portion of the 16 million members of that church participate in gang stalking. Okay? The Latter-day Saints, who from 2014 to 2016 treated me like family, who invited me into their homes, who fellowshiped with me, etc., who were friendly to me, who took a genuine interest in my membership in the church, I continue to wish you and your families well. But those members of the church, and I believe that there are a few, who I strongly ascertain are members that participate in clandestine gang stalking and espionage tactics. I hope you get yourselves together, because that's no way to live. Especially now that the program is being exposed. You're gonna create an embarrassment for yourself, an embarrassment for your family, and an embarrassment for your God. You know, the church has a fairly well-known structure, and it has a fairly well-known head of the church who's called the prophet. And he has a number of people counseling him. And there's a quorum of 12 men who serve cooperatively with the prophet, and they're called apostles. I'd like to see the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints say something publicly about clandestine gang stalking. I believe the prophet of the church is a man named Dallin H. Oaks. And when his tenure as prophet is over, a new prophet will be elected from the quorum of the 12 apostles in the church. And then when that man is made into the prophet, his spot as an apostle will be filled by a traveling minister in the church called an Area 70. And it goes on through the ages and the generations in that capacity. I would like to see the quorum of the 12 apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the next general conference session say something about clandestine gang stalking. I want to see every stake president and bishop in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in their next sermon say something about clandestine gang stalking. I want to see every missionary in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that goes on 2-year missions to other parts of the country and the world to proselytize and pick up new members to the church, tell every prospective member that they meet with in their homes about clandestine gang stalking. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a man that appreciates technology. I'm a man that appreciates communication. I'm a man that appreciates innovation. I'm a man that appreciates creativity. I believe all of these things have made the human trajectory through life better. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a lot of technology at its disposal. I want to see the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints use every piece of technology it has in all of the 200 countries that it's in to advance the conversation of clandestine gang stalking to the entire world. I want to see every Sunday school teacher in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to do a Sunday school lesson on gang stalking. For the members of their Sunday school class. I want to see every child 8 years old and over in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints taught about gang stalking and how it operates. Okay? I want to see every teenager in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, before they go on their missions, if they choose to go on their missions, or before they go off to college, I want every teenager to be given a crash course in clandestine gang stalking so that they'll know what to look for and so that they won't participate in it. And I want my lectures to be the textbook for those crash courses. Okay? When the heads of the church give their speeches and their sermons on clandestine gang stalking, I want my lectures to be played alongside their sermons. So that people can get a clear idea as to what gang stalking is, why it's consequential, and why it ought to be avoided by all costs. Because the lifeblood of gang stalking, ladies and gentlemen, is participation. If people stop participating in it, then it'll cease to be. It relies on human activity in order to work. So if it's rooted out for lack of participation, then it has to go away. There'll be no more targeted individuals. There'll be no more gang stalkers. There'll be no more liaisons. There'll be no more undercover operatives participating in it. And this monumental embarrassment, that's obviously an embarrassment for the American Republic, will cease to be. All right, in the Mormon Church, I want pamphlets handed out to every member in every congregation in the country, with my words printed on those pamphlets. About clandestine gang stalking and why it should not be practiced in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or any church. You know, I can't speak for the Jehovah's Witnesses. I can't speak for the Church of Scientology. I can't speak for the Southern Baptist Convention. I can't speak for the Pentecostal faith. I can't speak for the Catholics because I was never a member of those churches. Do I believe that all of those denominations of Christianity practice gang stalking in their congregations? Yes. Do I believe there are Christians of all walks of life across the demographic spectrum and across the socioeconomic spectrum that practice gang stalking? Yes. Do I believe that they do it in the name of Jesus Christ? Yes. Do I believe that they use the Bible as a template for why them practicing gang stalking is okay with their Creator? Yes. Do I believe they're wrong? Yes. Do I believe they're hell-bound? Yes. Do I believe that gang stalking is a disgusting embarrassment to the religious establishment here in the United States? Yes. Do I believe that their gods will forgive them for participating in gang stalking? I just don't know. That depends on a lot of things, and that's between them and their creator. But I'll tell you this, if I was the creator of this earth or this universe, and I created a living, thinking creature called man, and 2 million years later, that creation was participating in something like this, even as the creator, I wouldn't want them nowhere near me. Maybe I won't send you to hell. Maybe I'll send you to a nice purgatory where you all can hang out and signal each other for the rest of eternity. It just doesn't seem like a very valiant thing to do. It doesn't seem like a noble thing to do. It doesn't seem like something that a person of faith would do. But there are people of faith that participate in it because they think it's going to make them some kind of a big shot in their church. You know, to each their own, as they say. To each their own. If you want to participate in state-sanctioned thuggery that is made possible through a covert signaling mechanism, go ahead. You're eventually going to get caught, you're going to get exposed, and you're going to get embarrassed. And one day your children and grandchildren are going to say, man, I'm glad my dad, my mom didn't teach me that. You know, America needs to start looking towards the future. America needs to start looking 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years from now. What are people going to say about America? That it was the land of the free, that it was the home of signaling, that it was the home of the brave, that it was the home of some gang stalking. They'll say, boy, I tell you something, that America, man. Did you hear about them? They had some program called gang stalking. It was responsible for untold numbers of people's deaths. They might rewrite the Star-Spangled Banner. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly they hail from the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars they shed a light for all to participate in clandestine gang stalking. They're going to have to rewrite the Star-Spangled Banner over this. They're going to have to rewrite the United States Constitution over this. They're going to have to rewrite the Pledge of Allegiance over this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America so that every man, woman, and child of a sound mind, body, and spirit can participate in murderous, deleterious, germ-spreading, vehicular assault mechanisms with the power of the state. You're going to have to rewrite the Constitution over this. You're going to have to rewrite the Declaration of Independence over this. You're going to have to rewrite every state constitution in the Union over this. And factor in gang stalking into it. This ain't something that you could just perpetrate over a number of years, 60 years, 70 years, 100 years on your populace. And then turn around and say, well, I'm a great American, I'm a patriot. No, you're not. Gang stalkers are not patriots. Okay, you can't utilize a state-sanctioned signaling mechanism that has attack methods in it that you use on men and women and then turn around and say you're an exemplary man, or say you're an upright man, or even say you're a Christian man. I've never seen a single verse in the Bible that said that clandestine gang stalking was a reasonable thing to do. Some of you may point to Moses. Well, Moses said I could do this. No, Moses would be disgusted with you if he were alive. Jesus Christ, the deity of sacrifice, never authorized none of that either. Well, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. Jesus would be disgusted with you if he were here. Well, God loves me. God would be grossed out if he were to come to earth as a person and see this. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, you have a bit of a conundrum on your hands, don't you? You could find any excuse in the book as to why you participate in this. Well, I participate in clandestine gang stalking to keep my community safe. How are you keeping your community safe using a preemptive attack mechanism on people you've been signaled to attack? That's making your community more dangerous, because you're making enemies out of people who were not your enemies to begin with. I mean, I could go to any airport in Florida right now, and just sit and observe my surroundings, the people around me. I probably experienced my first instance of clandestine gang stalking before I even sat down. I'd probably experienced my first instance of clandestine gang stalking the minute I walk in the airport. Why? Because it was set up before I got into the airport that I'd be experiencing clandestine gang stalking in the airport. Well, we use that signaling mechanism, young man, in the airports because, some people go to those airports, looking to perpetrate criminal mischief, and you got dope peddlers that go into those airports sometimes and try to smuggle dope across seas, and some of those guys are terroristic threats to the homeland, and anyone that comes in an airport looking suspicious, or rather is suspicious according to what the stalkers in the airport say, we may have to take some kind of a action against you or prevent you from committing any number of heinous or atrocious crimes there. All right. People on the inside are signaled by people on the outside. A stalker does not have to be in the same building with you to signal a stalker in that same building. You can signal gang stalkers from outside of a building, and they're inside of the building that there's a target approaching. All right, technology has made that possible. How has technology made that possible? Technology is used for the furtherance of the progress of civil society here in the United States. How is that technology used? To harm those same citizens. Well, if you have persons that want to use technology to harm citizens, all you need is a justification. That justification doesn't have to be sound. That justification doesn't have to be common sense. That justification doesn't have to be anything but a made up or false narrative as to why various harassment tactics ought to be used against somebody. Gang stalking runs off of justifications, ladies and gentlemen. And I, your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, have had false narrative after false narrative after false narrative used against me. In the gang stalking world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an uncertain and potentially catastrophic practice the establishment here in the United States has essentially told target individuals, hey, look, okay, you're on your own here. We're going to make it so that it's almost impossible for you to come forward about this. We're going to make it almost impossible for you, as a targeted person, to communicate your story effectively. But see, they forgot one central or key theme when they decided to try and marginalize the voice of targeted persons. And here's what they forgot. It's not about how many people hear you. It's about the right people hearing you. I'm in South Florida now and have been for about 8 years. And I haven't had many conversations with people in person about clandestine gang stalking. That's not really my thing. Okay, if I do one of these lectures in public, well, when I say in public, I mean they're all in public. I do most, if not all of them, outside. But if I do one in a crowded place, like for example my Invisible Empire lecture, which I did in front of an audience of about 100 people at near the government center downtown in Miami. Obviously I had to project and raise my voice quite a bit during that lecture. But that's probably the most person-to-person interaction that I have with other citizens of this country when I do my lectures or when I talk about gang stalking. My preferred method of communicating information about gang stalking is through recorded lectures that I post on the internet. Those are typically the only times where I actually consider what I'm doing to be interactive with people around me. Okay, I'm not sitting down and having a lot of one-on-one discussions with people about this because, quite frankly, it's a more effective mode of communication given the scope of gang stalking to communicate about it online. And people can choose to observe what I say online on any number of websites at their leisure. I'm of the mindset that that is the most effective way of communication. What is high treason, ladies and gentlemen? It's when treasonous actions are done at high levels. Now, does the President of the United States sign off on legislation that authorizes gang stalking? Yes, but he doesn't know that he's signing off on legislation that authorizes gang stalking. The treason is whoever formulated that bill that became law snuck into that bill stipulations that authorize gang stalking. And a lot of bills that Congress has signed off on are thousands of pages in length, and no one really reads through them from cover to cover. So a lot of stuff gets snuck through Congress in bills. There are trillions of dollars of taxpayer money being spent for useless garbage. Every term, every congressional term, because stuff gets snuck into those bills that are passed by the president, and no one in Congress or the president himself knows that these stipulations are wasteful. The late great Senator John McCain used to call it pork barrel projects. He also called them earmarks, which is their proper name. And essentially what earmarks are is they're inserts that go into bills that carry with them stipulations that the taxpayer has to pay for. And the ensuing projects, which he referred to as pork barrel projects, are useless to society, but they are very useful to the persons that secure the government contracts to manage those projects and put them into work and put them into motion. Gang stalking is one such project. It does not benefit society. Okay, it divides society into two segments: gang stalkers and targeted individuals. You risk a civil war there. Not necessarily saying that the civil war is going to involve arms, but it's an ideological civil war. You know, there are a lot of secessionists in America. There are some persons in this country that believe that the United States should be divided into two parts again: the northern states and the southern states. You know, the Reich Chancellor of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, as exterminationist and as xenophobic as he was, presided over a unified Germany. We live in a capitalist society that's the home of the free and the home of the brave and a democracy and this, that, and the other. And this country is more divided than any country that's ever existed in the history of humankind. You've got secessionists in this country that want to divide this country into sections that are essentially countries inside of a country. You know, my significant other, who I care for very deeply, Lori, she's a Southern girl, born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and I'm a Southern man. I'm born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. Those are both Southern states. They are both states that were Confederate states during the Civil War. But even to the present day, those are free, constitutionally sound states, meaning they have constitutions that are in line with the federal Constitution. And there are persons in various states across the country that say, hey, you know what? This federal system of a union, of an American republic, has failed. We believe that states' rights should outweigh the power of the centralized federal government. And we want to go back to the times in the 1800s where states were semi-independent. It's not out of a sense of romanticism, ladies and gentlemen. It's not out of a sense of patriotism. It's not out of a sense of law and order or civil justice or human rights or rule of law or good governance or corporate social responsibility or any of those things that the secessionists in this country want. Okay? They want more states' rights. They want more segregation. They want more power. They want more secessionism so that they can so they can perpetrate programs like gang stalking without federal intervention. They want to be able to abuse women and children using a state-sanctioned signaling mechanism. They want to be able to commit acts of hostile violence towards their fellow man without recourse. They want to be able to perpetrate any number of hostile or thuggish crimes against whoever they choose, so long as they have the backing of the state and the backing of other gang stalkers. That's why they want to succeed or secede. That's why they want more states' rights. That's why they want less power of the federal government It's so that they can have more freedom to perpetrate horrible atrocities against people without a federal government stepping in. Me, I'm of the mindset that the stronger the federal government, the safer that people's rights are. I believe in a strong federal government that is bound to a constitution and that is bound to the concept of inalienable rights and human rights and civil freedoms and constitutional liberties. That's the kind of federal government I want. One that steps in when stuff like this happens. Now, it's possible that the national security apparatus and the intelligence apparatus in this country got a little ahead of itself with respect to its implementation of clandestine gang stalking. All right, as a matter of fact, because of the espionage mechanism that I experience in my own clandestine gang stalking campaign, there are gang stalkers right this very second, on Southwest 88th Street in Kendall, Florida, Southwest 88th Street and Southwest 152nd Avenue in Kendall, Florida, who have been listening to me talk for the last 3 hours about a lot of things: gang stalking, cause stalking, hate stalking, community harassment, workplace mobbing, constitutional freedoms, history, science, politics, the law, self-defense, the military, federal, state, and local law enforcement, political theory, political science. And the only thing out of this whole entire 3-hour lecture that they heard was me refer to somebody as a piece of shit. That's all they caught. Out of the entire 3 hours and 15 minutes I've been talking, that's the only thing they heard. And that's what they'll retaliate on. Because they don't think that if you attack a woman clandestinely or behind closed doors or with some remote signaling mechanism that dispatches thugs against her, they don't think there's anything wrong with that. Why? Because they are pieces of shit that participate in stuff like that, and particularly against women. How are you going to use a state-sanctioned signaling, disruption, and covert attack mechanism against a woman? How big of a punk are you to do such a thing? So, ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about high treason, you're talking about treason in the highest reaches of this governmental establishment that we have called the United States of America. Okay, when it comes to making laws, it doesn't go any higher than Congress. Am I saying that Congress is a treasonous entity? No. Am I saying that Congress facilitates treason? Yes. How does Congress facilitate treason? Congress facilitates high treason by not properly vetting the bills that it signs over to the president. Okay, when a bill is proposed by congressional members, the entire House of Representatives votes on those measures, up or down, yay or nay, yes or no. If the yeses outweigh the noes, then that's ratification. That starts the ratification process. And if a bill is ratified by Congress, it's sent to the president for his approval. And we're talking the president of the United States, not the president of the Senate. When the president of the United States gets that bill, he reviews it or has his advisors review it. And if they see that all is well, they tell the president, okay, you can go ahead and sign off on this. And if the president signs off on it, it becomes law. Well, what do I think of President Donald Trump? I think he's a good president, all things considered. But I think President Trump, in his next rally or his next stump speech, should dedicate the entire speech to the auspices of clandestine gang stalking. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when it really comes down to it, future generations are going to look back on these times and say, I wonder why the president didn't speak on this. You have tens of thousands, if not more, sovereign U.S. citizens experiencing a clandestine, signal-based, state-sanctioned attack mechanism against their lives by other United States citizens who aren't punished, nor do they have any recourse for their actions. How can you call that a constitutional republic or a democracy? To allow such a thing to happen with impunity. People are going to look back on these times. Future generations are going to look back on these times and say, why didn't Congress do anything? And they'll look back on these times and say, well, it's hard to say what the Department of Defense or the Department of Justice did or didn't do. But what more can be done about this? What more could be done about it? High treason is when a member of Congress gets together with military-industrial complex elements and other federal actors and puts together a mechanism in which U.S. citizens in a mob capacity are dispatched, signaled, or directed in such a way so as to trample over people, target people, pester people, and attack people. Yeah, there's juveniles that participate in it too. Shouldn't that constitute the corruption of a minor if an adult who uses clandestine gang stalking teaches a child that, and the child goes to his elementary school, his middle school, or his high school and participates with that garbage against his fellow students while they're trying to get their education and get their academic credentials? Doesn't that contribute to the corruption of a minor, is the question. Now, I live in Kendall, Florida. There are a lot of sex offenders out here, a lot of sex offenders. Quite a few of them have been arrested for sexually abusing children. Children anywhere from 8 years old on up to 16. And some of them, in addition to their sex crimes, were charged with corruption of a minor. Gang stalking is also a corruption of a minor. You are corrupting minors with this. You actually have sexual perverts and child perverts that use gang stalking to get close to kids. Okay, these gang stalkers are a standing army of perverts. And quite a few of them are some of the biggest degenerates you've ever seen. And some people say, well, does it affect one group more than another? I don't know if it affects one group more than the other. What I do know is you got a population in the United States of about 315 million. All right. Only about 1 million of them are uniformed law enforcers. They can't be everywhere at all times. They don't see everything. They can't respond to every crime. And that void in between the number of uniformed law enforcers and the population is filled by these degenerate, signal-tossing thugs called gang stalkers. All right, some of them act as if they're participating in some sort of a community policing mechanism. They aren't looking for crimes. They ain't looking for crimes. They're looking for people to pester. So what do? You pay your officers more. Bump them up to 6 figures after 7 years on the job. And then give them pay raises every year or so according to their rank and duties. It'll increase interest in law enforcement work. And it'll decrease turnover in law enforcement jobs. Period. More cops equal less gang stalkers. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of gang stalkers out there that don't like the police. There's a lot of gang stalkers out there that see the police as their enemy. But it's ironic because the officers that do participate in gang stalking are using the same signaling mechanisms as the criminals that hate them. And yeah, gang stalkers are pests. They pop up out of nowhere with the intention of harassing people. I don't know if Congress thinks that that's a worthwhile thing to look into or not. Oh, just people just going around harassing people in big mobs. It's not a big deal to us. Fine. Continue to let these jackoffs degrade the lives of other people, using a mobbing mechanism that is state protected, and just go ahead and let that garbage flourish while the entire world watches. Go ahead. Go ahead and let these useful idiots run around and arbitrarily mess with people for no good reason other than to make themselves feel like a big shot or like there's something special, because they use a state-assisted pestering mechanism. Lets them screw with people with no recourse. Let them. Just go ahead and let them. Go ahead and let them continue. And watch the damage that it does to the image of this country. It's okay. A lot of stalkers don't care. They have too much fun participating in this thuggish rebellion. They don't care what it looks like to other countries. They don't care the damage it's going to do to the reputation of America. And they don't care what future generations are going to think when they look back on you. They just shrug their shoulders. They just caustically shrug their shoulders and say, so what? I'll be dead then. I won't care what other generations think of what I did. Well, that's perfectly fine. You can brag to your kids and grandkids how you degenerated the quality of the American way of life through this mechanism. And you know what? Quite frankly, I don't care what your racial background is. I don't care what your socioeconomic status is. And quite frankly, I don't care what your economic background is either. You think you act and you behave yourself like an ape. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen.